Okay, so what I want to look at today is just at the end of the parsha where HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to Avram. He changes his name, and then he gives in the bris milah. And I just want to try and understand a little bit deeper what the brit is all about, brit milah. So the Torah describes how Hashem says there are two britim, there are two different covenants. The first one is like the general covenant, the brit of Eretz Yisrael, and then there's this other brit that's going to come, and that's what he says. So the Torah says, "Vayomer Elohim el Avraham v'atayit briti tishmor v'atav v'zarecha acharecha." Says that. Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong passage. No, I'm right. Sorry. That he says you've got to keep my covenant, my brit, you and your children for all generations. V'zot briti asher tishmeru, and this is the covenant. This is the thing that you need to make sure that you are totally connected with. And what asher tishmeru beini beinechem beizaracha acharecha himol lachem kol basar. This is the covenant that you have to keep between me and your children. All generations, himol lachem kol zachar. Every male has to be bris. So we know that there's a mitzvah of what it all is and all the different aspects of it. But just let's have a look at how some of the Mefarshim try and understand what this brit is all about. So if we look at the Netziv tries to explain that that the thing about the previously in the psukim above that just come after the concept of korbanot, in the psukim above it's spoken about korbanot, that korbanot are a specific means of us connecting to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. However, says the Netziv that it's not our exclusive domain to have korbanot, because nations all over the world serve their gods or Hashem, whatever it is, through korbanot. So therefore, we have a special thing that we call Brit Milah. And he says, through this Brit Milah will be Mitsuyanim. Now, Mitsuyanim in Hebrew is normally translated as excellent. But if you remember in the Seder, we speak about Bnei Israel, that they were Mitsuyanim. The word Tzion, like Tziyun, is like a landmark. What it really means, it makes us distinctive. Shebezeyu Mitsuyanim. Lechach b'chol ha'olam, that this Brit Milah will make us mitzuyanim, will make us distinctive throughout the world. Not unlike the korbanot, which we've said are non-exclusive to the Jewish people. There's something about the Brit Milah, and he quotes the pasuk later on in the Torah, which is in Shmot, and in Shmot, where Bnei Israel are given the mitzvah to bring the Korban Pesach. One of the aspects of the Korban Pesach is that before you can bring the Korban Pesach, you have to make sure that you've had a Brit Milah. If that's the case, it would seem to be that's just the din that has to be. But then it says, that in that day, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take Bnei Israel out of Mitzrayim, al tziv otam. Al tziv otam is means like in there, we translate as their hosts, but it really means within their organization, within their group, that they're not mixed up, that there's a clarity as who is who. And the Netziv there points out that we need to understand that what it's showing is that group. If we're in specific groups, that means we all have a common purpose within that group, and we have or a purpose that we're trying to achieve. And he says that that's what it means when Bnei Yisrael notzro liyot or goyim. Our job is to be an or for the goyim, a light to the nations. And what does it mean that we have to be a light unto the nations? It doesn't mean we have to be the most brilliant in everything in the world, but what it really means is that we have to bring the world to some type of knowledge of Elohei Olam, the God of the creator of the world. That's why Avraham Avinu is called Av Hamon Goyim. Why? Because that's what he did. Avram's total focus was trying to bring monotheism into the world, and therefore he says, That's why Hashem gives Avram Avinu the mitzvah of milah. Why? because the mitzvah of milah is indicative of the fact that we are mitzuyanim. What does it mean? It says that whilst we are in Galus, and specifically there with Bnei Israel, we're in Mitzrayim, they were not yet circumcised. They hadn't yet reached their purpose. That is the way that we are able to gather together to find our common purpose. And now, now they're going out of Mitzrayim to be the nation of Hashem. And they've also had a Brit Milah, because you couldn't bring the Korban Pesach without the Brit Milah. The Korban Pesach is that special national offering, which is brought by the individuals to connect into the national space. So it has to be done by people who have had their Brit Milah, because without that, they don't have a proper affiliation to the ultimate purpose of Bnei Israel. And therefore, according to what the Netziv wants to point out, is that Brit Milah is really a national identity, which helps us to understand what our purpose is. The Kli Yakar points out, trying to understand what is this, what is the purpose, what it's all about. And he says here, Ein Tachlit HaMilah, that the purpose of Milah is very simple. He's saying it's not about a national thing, it's an individual thing. And an individual thing is, what's the purpose? Is in order not for us to have the Brit Milah on the physical aspect only, but the physical aspect of the Brit Milah is really to remind us that we have to have it's kind of, we speak about the circumcision of the heart. We have to be careful about the Orlat Alev, that which covers our heart, which stops us at connecting between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Kli Yakar, it'll be the sign between me and your children, that this external, this physical Brit Milah, that really is just a physical manifestation of the real Brit, and the real Brit is an internal Brit. It's a neshama dika Brit. That is in the heart, that is in our emotion, that is in our neshama, that is in our connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does that mean? He says, that it is the real connection that we want the world to see us having with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is not the connection of through the physicality, but rather through the way that we behave, through the way that we connect, through the way that we speak about Hashem as our God, and that really is what Brit Milah is all about. And that's why he says, that's why you'll see it. Hashem keeps speaking about the Brit. Why? To teach that the essential purpose of the Brit is to reach this tahor halev, the purity of the heart, hapnimi, the internal, the heart. So therefore, whilst we so people, it's so interesting that in the world today we are confronted with people who are quite anti-Brit Milah, but most people aren't. And what we find is people make a big spiel about the Brit, even if they're not connected, they don't really do much. But Brit Milah, you have to have a bris, but really what the Kli Yakar is saying is, don't focus so much on the physicality of it, but obviously that's important. I'm not saying it's not, but focus on its purpose, and its purpose ultimately is to purify our hearts. I have a cousin who's very, very far removed. I'm not sure if I mentioned it before, but very, very far removed. And so he lives in America, and miraculously, he marries a Jewish girl, just like mamish miraculously, because they're very far removed. And he marries this girl, and there's some tensions in their marriage, and then they have a baby. And the straw that broke the camel's back was the fact that she wanted to bris the child, and he refused. He thought it was barbaric. So it really is quite an interesting thing that as people are removed from the connection with Hashem, therefore they are also removed from the physicality of the Brit Milah. It's something important for us to remember. The last thing I want to share with you is a beautiful Ben Yehoyada. So the Ben Yehoyada quotes from the Gemara in Nedarim, and the Gemara in Nedarim says that Milah is great. Why is Milah so great? Gedola Milah. Why? Shalosh Esrei Britot Nichrutu Aleh. Because there are 30 with Brit Milah, there are 13 other covenants, 13 other britim that come with it. So where those are all based on the words of the Torah, where it says Brit 13 times. So if that's the case, what is this business? Why is 13 such an important number when it comes to Brit Milah? So says the Ben Yehoyada, but you have to remember that the word 13 is really the same as the gematria of the word echad. Echad, 1. How do we work that out? From Aleph, which is 1, Chet, which is 8, that's 9, and Daled, which is 4, that gives you 13. Why? Says because the place in which we do Brit Milah is indicative of the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one. And how do we work that out? And he's got a whole long understanding of why that is, of how that works out. But what he ultimately comes and he says that the number one, the Mispar Echad, comes to is indicated through Brit Milah is reflected in the pasuk which speaks about us as Goy Echad Ba'aretz, which is what we say on a Shabbos afternoon. We say on a Shabbos Atah Echad v'Shimcha Echad u'Mika Amcha Yisrael Goy Echad Ba'aretz. You Hashem are one, and your name is one, and there's only one nation on the world, Goy Echad Ba'aretz. Why is that? שלא יהיו היכולים האומות להחליף אמונתם ולשנותם כמו שאמרנו בגמרא. So that it's impossible that unlike the rest of the world, we Bnei Israel changed our whole, through Avraham Avinu's commitment to monotheism, we changed our whole being. We moved from Avodah Zarah, we moved from the space of idol worshipping to a space of monotheism. And in doing so, connected to the single Hashem, and therefore we become the Goy Echad Ba'aretz. That is unique in the world, in that it's completely and totally connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and there's no other aspects of our divine service. And therefore, through Milah, really it shows that we are this one singular nation, one specific nation. But not only that we are an Am Levadad Yishkon, V'Goyim Lo Yitchashav. We are a nation that lives alone. We live alone because of two things. Firstly, we look differently. We look different. Nowadays, yes, I know there's medical circumcision, so it's not so different. But traditionally, we were always different. We know that that's one of the ways that the Nazis would recognize the Jewish children or the Jewish males is through looking to see whether they had a Brit Milah or not. But that difference is not only in the physical, but it's also in the way in which we, as the Jewish people, are supposed to aspire. We're supposed to aspire to interact within the world, but not to integrate. We're supposed to maintain our value system. We're supposed to maintain our aspiration to bring godliness into the world. We shouldn't be considered as just one other nation, but rather through our actions, through our behavior, through our connection to Hashem, we should be considered to be a completely different nation, that Goy Echad Ba'aretz. I wish everybody a beautiful Shabbos. Please God will continue